So everyone, I am having a chat this afternoon with Polly Williamson, who I've known for a number of years because we evented together. Polly suffered a terrible, terrible brain injury about 9 years ago, and went through a pretty awful time, but has come out of it amazingly. And I'm thrilled to be chatting with Polly today. Hi, Polly. Thank you for talking to me.
Hi, Panda.
Hi. So, Polly, you were a top-class three-day event rider, winning numerous medals for Great Britain at junior, young rider and senior level, as well as placings at badminton and many other top-class three-day events. Can you tell us a bit about the awful events of December 2011?
It was a Thursday, 8th of December. I can tell you everything I've been told. There's a little bit of memory in the morning. I went to West Wilts Equestrian Centre, took a lorry load of horses to West Wilts Equestrian Centre to compete in a combined training. I rode 2 young horses. Apparently I won a class, but I don't remember that. And drove home and then climbed aboard another young horse to put him through his daily training exercises. I don't remember that. I don't remember anything after West Wilts. I remember competing at West Wilts, but I don't remember anything after that. But I was very lucky because there was a young student with me in the arena training. So she was there and saw what happened. My horse was playing around a bit, but slipped and fell over. What was more unusual was that he panicked when he hit the ground, and I was obviously still in the saddle. And he thrashed out and kicked like a crazy horse, went mad, like a wild animal, and caught my body in numerous places, including my head. And yeah.
Oh dear, awful. And Polly, what was the prognosis immediately, sort of after?
I think that the first response unit arrived very quickly and ventilated my body and put me into an induced coma. I'm not sure, they wouldn't give the statistics then, but I suspect they were pretty poor. Yeah. I was then taken to Frenchy Hospital. So I survived the first night, obviously, and the following morning my family were given the statistics or the possibility of my recovery, and this was having survived the first night, but they still said I had a third of a chance of not making it, a third of a chance of being severely mentally and or physically disabled, and a third of a chance of making a satisfactory recovery. And that was the prognosis.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any prognosis at that time, certainly, of me leading a life as I am now. Yeah. But that would have been the case for the first month.
Yeah. And how long were you in hospital for?
I was almost 5 months. I was in a coma for 11 days, then a high dependency unit, and then I was moved to the neighbouring brain injury rehabilitation units, and I was there for 4 months, I guess.
Yeah.
Before I came in.
And so with brain injuries, does it depend on the type and severity of the injury, whether you keep all long-term memories pre-accident, or if you lose them, if you lose those as well? Sorry, it's probably a bit of a weird question.
Well, no, it's I mean, basically speaking, that's the one to primarily ask a medical expert, because I am not a medical expert at all. But your memory and all other long-term effects depend primarily on the degree of consciousness at the time of the accident, and the length of time of coma. The coma scale, the medical coma scale, is from 3 to 15. 15 being as you are now, well and alive and living a full life, whatever. 3 is basically dead. certainly showing no signs of life. I was at 5.
Pretty bad.
And so pretty bad. I think that certainly to begin with, there inevitably anybody who's had a severe traumatic brain injury, as I've had, and was in a coma, the odds were not great. But as I got better, the first time I walked, I can't actually remember. When I came out of a coma, I was in amnesia. So I had something called post-traumatic amnesia, and was in amnesia for 6-7 weeks.
Wow.
And so I can't remember the first time I walked. The defining moment when I clambered out of that wheelchair and took those first few steps, I can't remember it. And they used to ask me these questions, apparently. Again, I can't remember. And I thought I had 4 children. I've got 2, so I'm not quite sure where the other 2 came from.
Oh, that's lucky.
And
right.
I couldn't remember my date of birth. I'm definitely going to forget that now as well. And everything else. So
yeah,
the prognosis was not great.
No. What was your sort of first memory that you have after the accident? I mean, it was obviously patchy for quite a while.
Yes, it was very patchy. But there is a very fleeting first memory. It was when I was moved to the rehabilitation unit, and patients that arrive are placed into a small ward, about 5 in the ward, before you have your own room. And there's a little flicker of me being aware I was in a hospital bed. I don't know how I knew it was a hospital bed, but I knew it was a hospital bed. And there was a bed across the room, across the ward, with a screen across it. And I thought, my goodness, I hope they're okay. Now, I do wonder now whether I realised the degree of the severity, because obviously in hospitals, often there's a screen across a bed because they might be having some medicine or changing or whatever. But I do remember thinking, my goodness, I hope they're all right. So possibly in that second, I was aware that it was not a great situation.
Yeah.
And then again, just a flicker of my youngest son, Jack, who was 2 years old at the time, him sitting on my lap, and it's just there, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And so there were quite a few memories like that. And then my memory began to return. I sadly remember my date of birth. More importantly, I remembered how many children I got, and the memory began to return. But it was still patchy for, certainly all the time I was in hospital, and still patchy when I came out of hospital. Yeah. And even now, I have to say, if there's something very important that I have to remember, I really nag my mind, my brain to remember it. And if preferably just write it down. Definitely just write everything down.
Yeah, yeah. And when you look back at that whole period, what strikes you as being probably the toughest time you had in your recovery? Is there a time that sort of stands out as being really?
Yeah, it wasn't when I was in hospital at all, no. Because even when I was in the rehabilitation unit, I had what I call a school timetable to follow. So I had my speech and language lessons to relearn how to talk, my physio so I could learn how to walk, the occupational therapy and all that. I had something to do, so I had something to focus on. When I came home to a completely changed life. My equestrian business had been closed. The horses had been sold or taken back. The owners had quite rightly sent them to somebody else to ride. We had a nanny to look after the children because I couldn't look after them. I couldn't drive. And I genuinely didn't know who I was. And for a long time, I completely lost my identity. And it took me a while to refine myself, I guess. that was definitely the hardest part.
Yeah,
definitely.
no, I'm sure. And I think you'll agree that, you know, anyone who is involved in equestrianism, eventing, racing, all that sort of thing, anyone involved in that sport is pretty bloody minded anyway. You know, tough, determined. Do you think that it stands people like that in good stead to recover from a brain injury like this, compared to lots of other people that may find themselves in this situation?
Yes, definitely. The human being is very capable of extraordinary things. We see that now with coronavirus. We see that with the military. I think if you dig deep, the human being is very capable of courage. But certainly the equestrian world is full of bloody minded people. And as my doctor called me, in fact, he told me I was a bloody mind pain in the ass.
Yes,
So,
I read that in your book.
and I think it's fairly true. Certainly my husband would agree. And definitely the toughness you learn from the equestrian world, you know, the hard work, the competing at all hours in all weather, and your horse comes first, so you know to work hard to look after your horse. Definitely that absolutely stood to me in good stead. In fact, in my 6 weekly report from the rehabilitation unit, one of the reports says something like my physio, I think, states that I was Polly's previous skills stand her in good stead now, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
They noted the fact that I was hardworking and tough.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm sure it helped. It helped massively.
Yes.
And do you miss your eventing now?
I don't, if I'm perfectly honest, because I was 42 when I had my accident with 2 young children. So I knew that life needed to slowly change a little bit. I was already beginning to back down from my top level competing, but very busy with the young horses, competing a lot with those. But I did definitely know that I needed to back off and change the way the business was being run a bit more, so that I could teach a little bit more, I could be more flexible. The children would only grow up, as well you know, they need more time once they're actually, you know, a bit older. And so I knew that I needed to change it. So actually I don't miss it. I missed my independence, because I have for a long time missed my independence, and I couldn't drive, I couldn't do very much, to be honest with you. So I definitely lost my independence. I missed that. But as far as the eventing career, I'm lucky enough now to train an enormous amount. So yeah, not really.
Yeah. Okay. And do you mind me asking, have you ridden since?
No, and you're not the first person to ask me, so it's
I'm
fine.
sure.
To begin with, when I don't actually remember making the decision in hospital, but obviously I just did. I just knew that I would never ride again. And initially that undoubtedly was because of my children. You know, they were very young, they needed their mother. And they needed a healthy mother as much as possible. So there was no question at all that I stopped because of my children. Then about 3 years ago, I did start to slightly beat myself up about it. You know what we're like, we're equestrian people. We know we should be more determined, we should really get on with it. And I did definitely start to beat myself up about the fact that I hadn't got back on the horse. And for a bit, it's, I wouldn't say affected me, but definitely got at me internally, on my mind. I was like, really, I should try. I even thought of one horse I teach, one lady I teach, she's got a lovely old horse. And I thought, I know Finn, the horse is called Finn. Finn would be perfect. Perhaps, you know, I could ride Finn. And I really, really was beating myself up about it. And then we were at a dinner party, and I was sitting next to a gentleman who I've known for a long time through Toby's work, actually. And on his other side was a lady who had read my book. And she said to me halfway through dinner, she said, "Have you written again?" And I said, "No." And then I must have been feeling quite relaxed, because I then said something that I'd not admitted to anybody before, not even my husband. And I said, "No. And I have to convince myself I haven't failed by not writing again." And the gentleman sitting between us immediately turned around to me and said, "No, you need to change that around and tell yourself how much respect you've gained by not writing again."
Yeah, I think that's quite right.
And I don't often regale that story, but I do whenever anybody suggests or talks about writing or whatever. Those words are just there, and I can repeat them to myself whenever I need to.
Really good, really good. Yeah, very, very good thing to say. And are your children keen riders, or do you worry about the dangers for them? Or
the youngest one, the youngest son, Jack, who's now 11, just 11, he is very keen, and he always, in fact, I'm sitting in his bedroom now, and you can't see, but his wall is splattered with Mark Todd, Piggy French, Pippa Funnel, you name it, absolutely splattered the wall. He is mad keen, and he always has been from the day he was born. He knew the names of my horses. He was so keen, and so we got him a pony for Christmas. He learned to ride at the local riding school for 2 years, so he was not, he wasn't handed on a plate by all means. He had to go to the local riding school, and he absolutely loved it. So he now rides the pony, who is adorable. And I'm not worried, because not at the moment, because it's a pony. As you know, ponies are so clever. They chip in little strides whenever they need to. Would I be more worried when he progresses to a horse or takes it more seriously? I'm sure I will, but I'm sure that I join every other parent.
Every mother worries, I think, don't they?
Exactly. So I'm not facing that yet.
No, exactly. Don't worry about that yet. And what would you say would be the best advice you could give to people, and their families, who suffer from a brain injury like you did, who are sort of fighting to,
talk to someone who's been through a traumatic brain injury. Because brain injuries, perhaps more than any other injury, don't reveal their character and prognosis for a long time. So that's why the recovery period can be quite difficult, because the initial injury is obviously terrible, and much worse for the family, because the patient is probably in a coma, as I was. But then when recovering, the brain injury doesn't reveal its true character for a while. And that can be very, very difficult. I looked fairly normal, and I sounded pretty much the same person. But inside my head, I was a jumbled up mess, having lost my identity completely. So that is very common with brain injuries, and that's the one thing I would say to anybody, is to read read books. I read James Cracknell's book. James Cracknell, the Olympic gold medal rower. He suffered a brain injury, and he said that he thought he was nearly James Cracknell. He never thought he was really James Cracknell. And when I gave a talk at the National Headway seminar in Shropshire, or Staffordshire, actually Staffordshire, I gave that talk, and at the end, a chap came up to me, and during my talk, I talked a little bit about a chapter which you've read in my book, which is quite hard, when I say I want to change my name. And I talk about the fact that I wanted to change my name because I didn't feel I was the same person. I was somebody different. I tried to recreate myself as some rather nice, quiet lady who wore long, flowing, flowery skirts. So a little different to how I am. And anyway, this chap, came up to me at the end of the talk I gave at this Headway seminar and told me that he had had a brain injury and he had changed his name by deed poll. And he was very kind. He said, "Thank you so much. I never really realized why I wanted to change my name. I just wanted to change it." And I now understand that A, it's very common with people who have had a brain injury, and B, you've explained to me why, possibly that's why I felt the way.
Yeah.
So definitely I would talk to people. Families of brain injury patients are probably best to talk to families. Patients, people who've had the injury, are possibly better to talk to fellow patients, if possible.
I mean, the awful thing about brain injury or sort of, well, brain injury, mental health, is because you can't see it.
Exactly.
And it's not I mean, I know it was a massive bang on the head, but because you can't see a broken, bone, or it's not in plaster, people don't know the awful hell that the individual is going through inside the head.
Absolutely right.
It's just
that is the worst thing. And somebody called it the silent illness. Because it's silent, and that would be anything psychological, really.
And much harder to sort of deal with.
It was because nobody understood. I looked and sounded pretty normal. And yet I just didn't know who I was. I completely lost my identity, and it took me a while to refine my identity, and definitely striving to succeed. Maybe that's my personality, I don't know, but striving to succeed in a few avenues was quietly but surely how I regained my identity.
And do your children ever ask you now about your accident?
Not really. No, they don't. Occasionally I just have to remind them that I do get tired very quickly. And I forget things. Jack is adorable, but he's 11 years old, just 11 last week. And he will say to me, "Oh, Mummy, I told you. Can't you remember? I told you. Why did you forget?"
Oh, I'm being told that all the time. So I don't think it's unusual.
No, I'm sure it's not. But yes, and I said, Jack, I just can't. But no, they don't really remember. I mean, Freddie was 6, so would have been more aware. But my family made absolutely what I would have thought was the right decision, and in as much as they never explained to him how serious it was. So he had no idea that it was touch and go. He knew I was in hospital. He knew I was away, but he was 6 years old. If mummy and granny and my aunts, in other words, my sister, are not worried when they never showed their concern in front of him, then he went to school and he carried on with his life. About a year later, after the accident, I was putting him to bed one evening, so he was probably 7 years old, and I guess he had just quietly begun to absorb a few more things, and he asked me, he said, "Did you nearly die when you had your accident?" And I obviously had to be honest with him, but I was very short. I said, yes, Freddie, I could have died, but thanks to the hospital staff, I didn't. And now I'm back here, bossing you around. So, come on,
exactly. So on to the next thing.
Well, very definitely that. And that's the way. I mean, they're young kids,
And Polly, you amazingly completed the Bath Half Marathon against the odds. Was it just over 2 years after your accident?
Yes. Gosh. Yes, it probably was. 2, 3 years. Yeah, 2.5.
And do you think having that goal really spurred you on in your recovery?
Absolutely, definitely, without a doubt, it spurred me on. I heard that the brain injury rehabilitation unit where I was at were going to run the Bath Half Marathon. The idea came from a former rugby union player, Lee Ordis, who had had a car crash worse than mine. I mean, his injury was considerably worse than mine, and he came up with the idea. Typical sports person, you know, you get up and go, you got to do something. And he came up with the idea, and I joined the team. Undoubtedly, having a goal to aim for, without a doubt, it helps you. And quite a few people said to me after the Bath Half, or a few months after the Bath Half Marathon, that I had improved considerably from after the Bath Half Marathon, because I had done something, you know. I'd done something on my own, or not on my own. I had a great team around me and a wonderful trainer. But I'd done something that had been my idea to complete it, my idea to train for it, my idea to run it.
Well, you had to do it, didn't you? And
yes,
no one could do it for you.
Exactly that, and it definitely helped. Yes, it moved me forward a lot, and then I began to pick up my life again.
Yeah. And Polly, I've just read your amazing book, Where Did I Go?, which I'm just going to put up here so people can see it. I really recommend everyone reads this book. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
It really was brilliant and just so inspiring. Can you tell us a bit about the journey of writing the book?
Well, as I said, completing the Bath Half Marathon definitely moved me forward quite a lot, and I was just beginning to find my way through the maze. You know, I was literally stuck in. First of all, I was stuck in a box labeled brain injured person. Then I came out of that box, but I was still in a maze, and I could not find my way out. And Bath Half Marathon definitely found a way forward. I could see the exit now, and I was working towards the exit. And then Alison Booth, who I'd ridden horses for and been incredibly generous with her time coming to see me after my accident, Alison suddenly said, completely out of the blue, very Alison really, you should write a book. And I went home straight away, switched on the computer, and started tapping away instantly, and started to write. And it would have been within 1 hour of the comment of Alison's that I started to write, and my thoughts just came, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote, and I enjoyed it.
Probably very good for you actually in healing, a part of the healing process, to get it all out and on paper. Do you think?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And I suddenly, I began to realize how much I had lost my identity, and how I came to refine myself. And writing the book definitely explained that to me, and judging from a few comments I've had from fellow head injury people, it has helped people, which, I mean, I never wrote it to thinking it will help anybody, but I'm glad it has.
It has enormously.
And it's got nothing, well, as you know, it's got nothing scientific in it. It's very much about being a bloody minor pain in the arse, which I am, and finding my way through it, and finding the light.
And it comes so much from the heart as well. It's just so sort of honest, and it's brilliant. I think a lot of people would find it brilliant to read it if they haven't read it already. So I highly recommend. So Polly, what are you doing now?
Well, right now with lockdown, actually, because I teach privately, I do a few groups occasionally, but groups of 3 or 4 and private lessons, and now that's possible. So I am busy teaching again. So that is great. So I'm basically busy teaching. My husband, Toby, is away in London Monday to Friday, although he's now working from home during COVID.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, he's away Monday to Friday. I'm quite busy teaching, looking after 2 boys, although Freddie now weekly boards, but Jack, the younger one, a pony to look after, and
Plenty, lots.
I am thinking of writing again. That's what
Are
I'm thinking.
you?
Yes.
Oh wow! God, well
Yeah.
done you.
It will be just a novel this time,
A
just a
novel.
book. And I have the idea. I know exactly what the story would be. And I started writing a little bit.
How exciting! Keep us posted.
I will do. Will do.
You write brilliantly, so I think it's a brilliant thing to do.
Thank you.
Great. And just one final thing, Polly. So you're an ambassador for the Jemima Liz L Trust.
Yes.
Can you just tell us a bit about this charity and how you became involved?
Well, as I think I said previously, Sophie Lazelle contacted me. I don't know her, had never heard of her, didn't know her at all, but she contacted me having read my book to say very nice complimentary things. So I replied to her message, email, and then she told me that she started this charity, and I made a few more inquiries and discovered that sadly her daughter had died from a brain aneurysm. And then, as I said, I was a couple of people said what an amazing lady Sophie Lazelle is, and so I then made the charity for presents for my 50th birthday. And after that, Sophie asked me to become an ambassador for the charity, to which I completely agreed. I know I was honoured to be invited. They've donated £65,000 worth of specialist equipment to children in need.
Wow.
Jemima Liz L was an organ donor, and when she died, her organs were donated to 8 people. And in 2017, she was named as the UK donor with the most recipients. So it is just a great trust that helps children who've had a traumatic brain injury, an acquired brain injury, and support organ donation.
Yeah.
So
what a brilliant charity to be an ambassador of.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Polly, thank you so much for talking to me today. It's fascinating, and I'm so pleased that you're looking so well, and it's just great to talk to you. I hope
it's great.
everyone will find it interesting, which I'm sure they will.
Well, it's great to talk to you, Vanda. Thank you.
Thank you so much.